Now, when Keith asked me to speak and I became aware that it was Mothering Sunday, the Lord laid on my heart this story of Ruth, from one of the oldest stories in the Bible, actually. But in order to get this, you can't really get it across in 20 minutes. I'm going to do my best. And you can't really cherry pick bits. You've got to take the whole thing. So I'm going to read through it and bullet point it as we go, because for me that's the best way of it explaining this story that works on so many different levels. This is a tragic story that is ultimately life enhancing. It's about God working in the background, even in the most trying of circumstances. It's a story that begins with starvation, death, loneliness, isolation, desperation, bitterness. Much like I felt when I first moved from Surrey to Hereford. That's a joke, really. I love Hereford and the mud. But it ends in hope, happiness, love, goodness, and finally points towards God's ultimate redemption for mankind. So, bear with me, we're going to get stuck into it. In the days when the judges ruled, you remember Israel always moaning, bad judges, bad kings, didn't ever want God in charge. There was a famine in the land, surprise, surprise. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Epaphrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now, that was no mean thing. Moab wasn't the place to be if you were an Israelite. They didn't get on. They didn't worship the same God, the Moab God. He liked a little bit of human sacrifice, so we'll leave it at that. Now, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women. Big move. One named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there for about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Now, there's no mention made here of Naomi's culinary skills, so we're going to have to assume that they died of unknown causes, which was often the way in these hard times. But let's just take a minute and think how difficult this must have been for Naomi. She'd left her homeland, her friends, her relatives, all her security. She's tired and hungry and full of anxiety for the future. Because immigrants are not always welcome in a foreign land. And there she was. And then, in the midst of all of that, her worst fears are recognised. Her husband dies. The main provider for her and her sons is gone. The man who had been by her side for years is no longer there to greet her in the morning. He's not there to lift her up when she's feeling down, to hear about her struggles, to comfort her in the night. Just the bitter tears of loneliness and despair. Yet she struggles on through, and her sons take Moabite wives, and life is livable again for about 10 years. So this story carries on over the course of people's lifetimes. And it should parrot your own life, your own walk with God. And then tragedy strikes again. Her sons die, and once again she is bereft, only this time even more so. How must she have been feeling at that moment? And where was God in all of this suffering? This must have been an unbearable grief she was going through. Now, when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living, and she set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." She kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." So once again, what sadness is this? How could life be so cruel? There's no room for mother-in-law jokes here, as these 3 women were united in grief, and it was their love for one another that had got them through this far. But here was Naomi doing what she thought was best for them by telling them to stay in the land of their birth, find new husbands. They didn't want to go, but they knew that it was probably the best idea in these dreadful circumstances. Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband, even if I thought there was still hope for me." See the desperation in Naomi here. "Even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." So she's blaming the Lord for these tragedies. And at this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Now, did Orpah do the right thing in staying? One could hardly blame her. We don't know what happens to her, but on paper it was undeniably the sensible move, the most practicable thing. Yet Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." And here Ruth is about to make a declaration of love, loyalty and commitment that frankly puts shivers down my spine. Such is the intensity of her statement. Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." Wow. If ever I end up in the front line of a battlefield, which hopefully I never do, you can keep John Wayne or Clint Eastwood or Ryan Reynolds, whoever the latest macho tough guy is. I want Ruth alongside me in the trenches. What loyalty is this? Ruth had lost her husband, her brother-in-law, all her security in life. It's all been cruelly snatched away. She must have been broken inside. Yet, her concern was not for herself, but for her mother-in-law. She's forgotten about herself in the moment and pledged an allegiance to Naomi that speaks of a supernatural love. Ruth put her own grief to one side and thought only of helping Naomi through her own battles. How could Naomi resist such loyalty and love? When Naomi realised that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the 2 women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, Can this be Naomi? Why do you think they didn't recognise her? Had these years of bitterness turned her hair grey? Had her face wrinkled up? Did her mouth have a downward turn? Don't call me Naomi, she told them. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Who's she blaming? Naomi meant pleasant. Mara meant bitter. Now I want to take you back to the First World War. My old friend C.S. Lewis, he's 18 years old and he's training for the front line, the Somme. And he makes a friend in training called Paddy Moore. And they make a pact with each other that if one should not return, the other would care for the other one's family. Paddy Moore did not return. Lewis did. And he made good on his promise, and he provided for Mrs. Moore and her daughter for the rest of her life and the rest of Lewis's life. Yet Mrs. Moore was unable to deal with the bitterness she felt at the loss of her only son. And although she was a woman of great kindness, that bitterness ruled her emotions and eventually turned her heart to stone with regards to God. And she died, seemingly unmoved by the love and loyalty of Lewis. And she remained unconverted to the faith that had motivated and enabled him to do it. Back to Naomi. She returned from Moab accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favour." So again, as soon as they get there, Ruth's first concern is to get to work and look after Naomi. Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." She went out and entered a field and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz from the clan of Elimelech. So gleaning's a good word, isn't it? But she was picking up the dregs. That's what poor people did. That's how she was. Being a widow, being a woman, being a widow, not a good thing in those days. You would often starve. And she was gleaning for Naomi. Just then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you, the Lord bless you," they answered. So Boaz is clearly a man of God. Boaz asked the overseers of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?" The overseer replied, "She is a Moabite who came from Moab with Naomi." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters." She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. So not only has Ruth made this declaration of loyalty to Naomi, she is now out in the fields working her fingers to the bone to put food on the table for her. And she's being noted for her hard work. She's some kind of woman, some kind of special woman. So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you." Bit troubling, isn't it? "And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She asked him, "Why have I found such favour in your eyes that you noticed me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I have been told about you, what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." So Ruth has been noticed because she's put aside her bitterness and her self-pity, and she's worked for the good of others, and it's been noticed. And it's been noticed by a man of God, and that man of God is now wishing the goodness of the God of Israel to bless her, to be richly rewarded because she's come to the right place. So Boaz is a good guy who has listened to the high praise of the folk and what they've been saying about her. His heart has been moved to bless her. It seems that God was working in the background. And what does Romans 8:28 say? And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Now, I know that verse can be misconstrued, because people think, oh, look, something bad happened to me, so therefore Christianity doesn't work. But that's not what it says. It says, in all things, good and bad, God works for the good of those who love him. So, who love God and who have been called according to his purpose. May I continue to find favour in your eyes, my Lord, she said. You have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servants. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar. When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men, let her gather among the sheaves and don't reprimand her. Even pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted about an ephah. That's about 40 litres, 9 gallons. I googled that. It would have taken her between 2 and 4 hours to thresh all that. She carried it back to town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over after she had eaten enough. Her mother-in-law asked her, where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you. Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one in whose place she had been working. The name of the man I work with today is Boaz. The Lord bless him, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. She added, that man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers. So we're not going to get into that too much, but this man was able to redeem, to look after, to save people within the broader family. He's a guardian redeemer. Then Ruth the Moabite said, he even said to me, stay with my workers until they finish harvesting all my grain. Naomi said to Ruth, it will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, because in someone else's field you might be harmed. Dangerous place for women. So Ruth stayed close to the women of Boaz to glean until the barley and the wheat harvests were finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. So she's been at it all through the season. One day, Ruth's mother-in-law said to her, my daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided for. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be winnowing barley in the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are here until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. Now this all sounds a little bit like a seduction, but it was a custom. So don't get distracted by that. I will do whatever you say, Ruth answered. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything for her mother-in-law had told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I am your servant, Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family. She's asking him for his help. The Lord bless you, my daughter, he replied. This kindness is greater than which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town that you are a woman, all the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognised, and he said, "No one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor." He also said, "Bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out." When she did so, he poured into 6 measures of barley and placed the bundle on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her, and added, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said, wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down, just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, "Sit here," and they did so. Then he said to the redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so, but if you will not, tell me, so I will know, for no one has the right to do it except you, and I am the next in line." "I will redeem it," he said. Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquired Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with this property." At this, the guardian redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." Because there was a contract there that meant that his sons might, that Ruth's offspring or Naomi's would get the inheritance and not his own family, so that's why he wouldn't do it. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself." And he removed his sandal, which is what you did apparently when there was a sign of a contract that you would remove your sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have brought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses." Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make a woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem through the offspring of the Lord. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now, I just want to recap on a few things here. C.S. Lewis, this chap that had looked after Mrs. Moore until she died when Lewis was about 50, fell in love in later life, but it was a short-lived romance, for his wife died after only 3 years. And he went through a tremendous grief, and he wrote these thoughts down about a month after his wife died. And I just want to read it out because I think it's relevant to the depth of grief and how grief can arrest people and really make them examine whether or not they truly believe and whether or not they've truly sympathised with the sufferings of others. This is what he wrote. I had warned myself not to reckon on worldly happiness. We were even promised sufferings. They were part of the programme. We were even told, blessed are those that mourn, and I accepted it. I've got nothing that I hadn't bargained for. Of course, it is different when the thing happens to oneself and not to others, and in reality, not in imagination. Yet, but should it, for a sane man, make quite such a difference as this? No, and it wouldn't for a man whose faith had been real faith, and whose concern for others people's sorrows had been a real concern. The case is too plain. If my house has collapsed at one blow, that is because it was a house of cards. The faith which took these things into account was not faith, but imagination. The taking them into account was not real sympathy. If I had really cared as I thought I did about the sorrows of this world, I should not have been so overwhelmed when my own sorrow came. So Lewis's faith was tested and found wanting, but ultimately it survived the hammer blow of this life. He only lived another 3 years anyway. He was already in very poor health. But he went on to publish further books and write many supportive letters to people who are in similar situations. And I've read there nothing but faith in God and hope for eternal life. He said to one woman, a very famous woman from America, he said, has this world been so good to you that you couldn't possibly bear to leave it? There are far greater things ahead than anything we've left behind. Ironically, he died about a month after that and she lived another 13 years. Anyway, Lewis survived, but can you trust God's unseen hand in the midst of such deep suffering? Can you avoid drinking from the bitter cup and choose instead to pour out the oil of God's love and blessings into the hearts of others? Have you enough hope in Christ's redeeming power to be a redeemer yourself to those around you that you see in need? That's what Ruth did. That's what Boaz did. That's what Christ did. My mind is taken back to Jesus, nailed to a cross, his hands and feet supporting him. The only way he can breathe is to stand up, because when you lean forward on a cross, you suffocate, and you stand up and you feel the pain in your hands and your feet, and your life is slowly slipping from your body, it's leaching away. You're in agony, you're suffocating, the worst kind of death there can be. And Jesus is dying on a cross. What does he do? He turns to his mother and he says, behold your son. And then he turns to John and says, behold your mother. His thought was for his mother, at his time of death, the most excruciating pain we can die. And there he is, not thinking of himself, but thinking of his mother. And John took Mary and she lived with him for the rest of her life. That's the kind of Redeemer we've got. And that's the kind of example we have to follow. I wanted to sing a song called Waymaker, but sadly John doesn't know it. But in that song it says, it's all about God working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. God was working even here, back in the time of the judges, because Ruth was the great-grandmother of King David, of the lineage that led to Jesus. God carried Ruth and Naomi through their darkest times, and he set them on the rock of salvation as they all once again knew what it was to love and to be loved. I just want to reiterate that, because we don't learn too much about Naomi. I just want to go over what these women said. The women said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who to this day has not left you without a redeemer. May you become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. So this redeemer, I'm not quite sure, I've looked this up, whether she was talking about Boaz or the son that was born, Obed. That's not quite clear. I think she's talking about Obed, because the point is Naomi was looked after. She didn't have any financial worries. She didn't have any emotional worries. Because it says here, for your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. Now I know a little bit about the joy of having a grandchild and how much love you have and how much joy they bring into your heart. The women living there said, Naomi has a son. And they named him Obed. So they were all redeemed. And it was all down to God, working in the background, in the silence, in the desperation, in the loneliness that went on for years. So may I finish by wishing you all a happy Mothering Sunday. May you be assured that your God goes before you in the same way that he is behind you, because he's got your back. Right now as we speak, he is with you, just like he was with Ruth and Naomi, even when they couldn't see it. Amen.
Amen.